So Baba Yaga was revealed on the 7.4 patch note show, and I just want to give my initial thoughts on her, sort of a review of her kit, how things are going to work, how you can best use them, and just what I think about her in general. She seems like a really cool god. She brings a lot of interesting things to the table. A lot of her abilities are very unique and different, and she also has a fair bit of randomness in her kit. Not like a completely overwhelming amount of randomness. I feel like they did a decent job with not making it too crazy to the point where it'll be frustrating, other than the one. The one is a little bit like iffy. It's kind of right on the verge of being too much randomness, but I think they did a decent job with it overall. So first off, we have her passive, which is the creeping cabin. Essentially, Baba Yaga's cabin, on chicken legs, of course, because it's Baba Yaga, will essentially walk around the map, and it'll stay relatively close to her, but it'll walk around in general, and as it walks, it fills up essence inside itself, and also, if it goes near enemy gods, it'll get additional essence. So what does this essence do? Well, the essence essentially allows you to either stack items faster or heal. It'll prioritize stacking items, so if you have items that can be stacked, it'll prioritize giving the essence to those instead, but if you don't have any items that need stacking, it'll give you a health heal instead. So this is pretty cool, and it allows for like some probably very unique builds that Baba Yaga will be able to go compared to other mages that other mages simply wouldn't be able to use. Things like going Hide of the Urchin and being able to stack it up really easily, and of course Warlock staff, that's what everyone's thinking with her. Since the item takes so long to stack up, needing 100 stacks, she can stack it up from last hits as well, of course, but then her cabin will give her probably a few extra stacks towards it as well. The item stack cost isn't like a certain amount of essence for one stack of an item, because then it'd be broken on items like Karen's Coin and Hide of the Urchin that don't need many stacks, and it'd be terrible on items like the Warlock staff that I mentioned that like require a lot of stacks. So essentially what they've done is made it so that the essence is divided by like the maximum amount of stacks that the item has, so like if the item requires more maximum stacks, you'll get stacks faster for it. And the actual numbers for this is 400 essence will fully stack an item, and the cabin can store 100 essence over time, so like a maximum of 100, so you need to be making sure you're going back to the cabin and getting the essence, otherwise it's going to cap out at 100. It's kind of hard to tell how much essence this thing's going to get in general, because on the patch note show they were just kind of demonstrating it and showing it like near gods and as it walks around. We'd have to have like playtesting and things in a real environment to see how quickly this stacks up, and how powerful this is going to be really depends on how quickly you can get essence. If you're going to be able to have Warlock staff fully stacked by 10 minutes in, it's obviously going to be broken, but if it's a little bit slower than that, then it depends where on the scale it lies, how powerful this is really going to be. And honestly, everyone's saying the stacking part of this ability is going to be pretty crazy, but I think the health heal is also going to be really strong. Like once you're done stacking your items, obviously like late game when you're done stacking your items, you're not going to need those item stacks anymore, so it's just going to be for the heal. Or if you don't go stacking items at all on her, which I think is probably not going to be the case, they've probably balanced this passive so that you want to go stacking items because that's kind of the main flavor of it. But if there was a case where maybe you play her in a different role or something and you don't want to stack, the maximum health healing is actually really strong. It costs 4 essence for 0.8% of your maximum health, so that's going to be 25 ticks from a full cabin of essence, which is going to be 25 times 0.8. That's 20%, right? So you can heal 20% of your max health from a full cabin, which is actually pretty solid. Like if you just keep a full cabin of essence ready and then you get into a team fight, you take some damage, you can quickly like dip from the team fight, heal 20% of your health like pretty quickly, and then just kind of jump back in. So yeah, this passive is definitely really cool, very flavorful of course. They couldn't have made Baba Yaga without including her cabin, so I really like this to be honest. So moving on to her 1, which I think is probably her second most interesting ability after the 2, because the 2 is really amazing, but we'll move on to that in a second. So the 1 is essentially a random targeter. You'll fire a line forward and then it will either arc to the right, arc to the left, split, or do it in like an oval. So this is where a lot of the randomness really comes from, because 1, the targeter is random, and 2, it leaves behind a trail. Think similar to sort of Cupid Dash, where it just leaves behind like a trail of like area that will give you different benefits. The benefits are also random, so you can get either protections for your team, movement speed for your team, or a slow for the enemy team, and that's completely random. Oh, actually scratch that, you can also get a silence on hit. So there's like 4 different random effects that you can get when you fire the ability, and also 4 different random targeters, which is where a lot of the randomness for her kit comes in. This is why I was talking about how it's a little bit kind of pushing the boundaries on what I think is acceptable for RNG in Smite. If any of you know me like well enough, you'll know I really don't like crit in the game, because I don't like just losing a fight based on a 25% dice roll. I mean, I guess it has a place in the game like in a mild form, which I think this kind of is. While enemies also obviously can't predict what targeter you're going to have, so they might just get hit by something when like they thought they might not, because like they thought you were going to have a different targeter or something. Baba Yaga will know which targeter she has, so like you're not gonna have to worry about like firing something and it goes the complete wrong direction and you get screwed over. As the player, you're going to know which one you have next, but enemies won't know. The thing that I think keeps this ability in check a little bit is that for the most part, the abilities like targeters wise will all fire forwards, and then they'll have like an additional effect as well. So they'll all go forwards, and then you'll either be like an oval, or you'll fork off to the right, fork off to the left, or split in the middle. It's not going to be something ridiculous like, oh, it's going to randomly fire behind you or something. Like if it is something like that, I think it'd be a bit too ridiculous, because like you could be running and then you could just fire it and the enemy's not expecting it to go behind you, but it goes behind you, and it's like, if they did that, I think it'd be a little bit too far. But the way they've done it, I think is pretty good. I also really do like the unique targeting effects though. I don't play much League of Legends, but when I have played a little bit of League in the past, I really enjoyed Vel'Koz because of the way his Q works. For any of you that have played that game, essentially you fire it and then you recast the ability and it splits into two that fire off at 90-degree angles from the initial cast. And it makes it really interesting with abilities where you can like kind of fire it off at an angle and then it like jolts away the other way, and like you can hit people from further away than you would with just a simple line targeter, which you can kind of do similar things with this, which I really like. Okay, moving on to the 2, which is I think her most cool ability and also has a little bit of randomness to it as well. Baba Yaga brews a potion and she can have 3 different ingredients of these: the Eye of Newt, which is red, the Dragon Scale, which is blue, and the Wolf Tooth, which is green, I think, if I remember correctly. She has 5 different ingredients for this ability and they can all be randomized, so you could get like 5 Eyes of Newt or 5 Wolf Tooths, or just like 2 and 2 and 1, or 3 and 1 and 1. You could get a completely random set of these. It's just completely random. And the effects these have is the Eye of Newt, or the red, increases damage by 7.5%. The Dragon Scale increases slow by 12.5%, which is the blue one, and the green Wolf Tooth adds a 7.5% attack speed slow and power reduction to enemies hit. So at the absolute top end for this ability, you're going to be doing, how much is that? 37.5% additional damage if you get 5 Eye of Newt. You'd be doing, I think, 75% slow, which is kind of ridiculous. Is that 75? 50? No, 62.5%. So you'd be getting a 62.5% slow if you get 5 of the Dragon Scales, which obviously is pretty unlikely, but that could be a bit ridiculous. Because that's not like a decaying slow like some gods have in the game where it gets like weaker over time. That's just a straight up 62.5% slow for 2.5 seconds, which of course is going to be affected by diminishing returns. It won't be an actual 62% slow on your character, but that could still be really strong. And then each of the green Wolf Tooths adds a 7.5% attack speed slow and power reduction. So that's going to be 15, 30, 37.5 attack speed and power reduction, same as the actual bonus damage. So if you get all 5 of those, 37.5% attack speed and power reduction for 5 seconds could be a pretty ridiculous, honestly. Obviously, the randomness on this I think is much more okay than on the 1, because it's randomness that sort of equalizes. So in general, you're going to get a potion that's like a 2-2-1. You're going to very unlikely get like a 5-man potion with like 5 Eye of Newt or 5 Wolf Tooth or anything like that. Most often, you're going to get like a combination of both effects. So the ability kind of normalizes where like you have an expected outcome for the ability, essentially. If you get hit by this, you can expect to get like a little bit of each effect, not like 5 of one usually. So the thing I really like about this ability is that you can store them. You can brew it up and then you can throw it if you want to, and you can also see what you brewed up. So if you see that you have like a really powerful potion, like maybe you have a 5 Eye of Newt potion that's going to do a crap ton of damage, you can store that in your consumable slot for later and throw it whenever you need to. So for example, in base, if you do want to take this at level 1, which I think might be the play, it depends how good the clear is on the 1 and how you can kind of clear with this brew, but if you do take it at level 1, you can essentially sit in base fishing for the best potion, because obviously you have infinite mana, so you're only really restricted by cooldowns. So you can have a few tries at getting a potion. If you get like a 4 Eye of Newt potion or something, you can clear really fast with that. So you can store that in your consumable slot and then brew up another one ready to throw as well as you go into lane, and essentially have 2 potions to throw at the wave or at speed buff. Actually, scratch that, I just read that the ingredient count is 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, so you can't get like a 5 Newt potion immediately at the start of the game, but you could get a 3 Newt potion, which is pretty strong still. Overall, I really like this ability, to be honest. It's probably one of the coolest abilities we've seen on a god, like maybe ever in Smite, but like definitely in recent memory. This is a really cool ability, especially the fact that you can store it for later. Like it has some really kind of tactical gameplay where like if you do want to like get a really strong potion, like maybe you get a super like attack speed slow and power reduction potion, you're ready for a team fight, then you can just store it and use it later. So the 1 and the 2 are pretty complicated, but the 3 is definitely a more simple ability. Essentially, you crawl inside the cauldron, gaining up to 35% damage reduction, which is pretty damn strong, and then after a small wind-up, you essentially explode, deal damage to enemies in an area, and then, like, leap away. You also knock-up immune during the cast, so if anyone tries to hit you with a knock-up, it's not going to have any effect, but if anyone hits you with anything else that would cancel an ability channel normally, like a silence or a stun, for example, then it's going to take you out and take the cooldown. So it's really punishable if you're on gods that have, like, quick on-demand CC, like against a Nox, for example. A Nox can see you go into this and just immediately press 2 on you. You're not going to be able to go anywhere, and then your team can follow up and burst you down. So it's really sort of like a risky ability, but I really do like the 35% damage reduction, actually. It reminds me a lot of Nox's Old One, where you gain, like, massive damage reduction for a short amount of time. It's almost a bit like a Nemesis shield, where, like, you can preempt abilities that are going to hit you that do a lot of damage, reduce that by, like, 35%, and then just, like, jump out. And finally, moving on to her ultimate, she calls down the cabin onto herself, which does damage in an AoE, like, as it lands on top of you and knocks all enemies away, and then you essentially crawl up inside the cabin, and you can fire 4, like, AoE bursts of Witchfire, which do initial damage on hit, and then they also spawn, like, an area of fire that chases enemies around. So it's not just, like, going to leave a fire trail behind, like, where you hit it, it's actually going to chase enemies, so you can more reliably get off the burn damage overall on this ability, and that makes it actually do a lot of damage. A lot of the time, you're probably not going to get the landing damage of this ability, because you might get it on, like, one enemy that's diving on you, but if you're trying to, like, initiate in a team fight with it and throw it from range, you're probably not going to be hitting the enemies with the cabin landing damage, more just with, like, the Witchfire blasts, unless you want to be an absolute mad lad and just buy blink into 5 people, call the cabin onto yourself, and then just go ham. But it sort of sounds like when you read this ability description that the cabin makes you immune or gives you some kind of massive damage reduction or something. That's actually not the case. You'll just get like a small-ish health shield when you call down the cabin, so, like, you're not going to be invincible during this ultimate. If you were, I think it would be really broken, because, like I said, you could just blink in, land the cabin on yourself, become invincible, knock everyone away, do a crap ton of damage. That would be way too strong, but she just gets, like, a small health shield. So, like I kind of mentioned, I feel like there's sort of 2 different uses for this ability. One is why you just, like, call it down on yourself and don't worry too much about the landing damage. Maybe use it to get one assassin off of you and then fire from range or over walls. Like, in jungle fights, this could be really strong. You could just, like, ult, and then, like, because it can go a decent distance and goes over walls, you could, like, snipe objectives with it, or just, like, catch the enemy team with their pants down when they're, like, trying to come through a jungle corridor. You just fire these bursts over the wall, do a crap ton of damage to them. But then there's also, like, the application where essentially you just blink in, go ham. Just, like, this might work better with a tank build where, like, you blink in, or maybe you don't even blink in, maybe you just run into the enemy, or you use your Witch's Cauldron to jump into them and try and get the absolute maximum value out of this ultimate by getting the landing damage. Like, as you jump into a bunch of people, land it on a bunch of them, knock them all away. But that's obviously much more risky, which is why I think it might work better on, like, a bruiser / tankier build for her. Perhaps even in solo lane. I don't really see her being too viable in solo, but there's nothing that really stops her from being that, like, unviable in solo. She can stack really well, which is pretty powerful. Like, if she goes Warlocks in solo, she can kind of compete a little bit in the tankiness department. Like, you could go Warlocks, Boots into Breastplate, maybe into Urchin, because you can stack it easily, and just go kind of a tanky CDR style build. I think that could work. But in general, even if you're just playing her in mid, you're probably going to be building Warlock staff on her every single time, I think, just because the only downside to Warlocks is how long it takes to stack, and if you mitigate that downside by having these extra stacks from her passive, it's going to be really powerful on her. Honestly, I think even Urchin is an auto build on her as well. Like, you probably just go, like, Warlocks, Boots, damage item / penetration, maybe another damage item / penetration, Urchin, final damage item, and then sell Boots for, like, something situational, like maybe a little more defense if you need it, or just more raw damage. I feel like a bruiser build like that, even if it doesn't work in mid, could definitely work in solo, I feel like. And then you can kind of play that more aggressive playstyle where you sort of dive in to get the maximum value out of this ultimate and get the knock up and stuff, because if you're not that tanky and you're playing like a mid lane build and you're building for burst damage, you're not really gonna want to jump into 5 people to use your ultimate like this. You're gonna get bursted down really quickly. But anyway, that's my initial thoughts on Baba Yaga and, like, a quick review of her kit. I know this probably wasn't very, like, it was probably quite erratic because I'm recording this fairly late right after the patch notes show, because I just want to get this out to you guys. I'll probably have a video where I have my thoughts more collected and stuff, like either after release or after I played her on PTS, where I can kind of discuss about her a little bit more when I've had, like, some more experience playing her and, like, actually played her myself, because you can only really see so much from patch notes. So I've just kind of gone over a review of her kit and what I kind of initially think here. I think she looks really cool. The randomness is reasonably changed. The one's a little bit iffy, but, like, the 2 I really like the randomness on, and it doesn't seem too crazy. And in general, she really fits that kind of, like, trickstery, almost like madness, like controlled chaos style playstyle, which I think is really great for Baba Yaga. It fits her lore really well. But anyway, that's it from me. Let me know what you think about Baba Yaga in the comments down below. I'll be really interested to see community opinion on this, because this is a god that a lot of people want to see, and I really like it myself, actually. actually. Stay tuned for me playing her. I'll probably play her on PTS if not on the live client, and have some gameplay videos of her both in mid and solo, so stay tuned for that and make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out, you nerds.